a program featuring a positive outlook, dealing with everyday situations of marriage, children, and business with challenges and opportunities. Believing Philippians 4:13. You and I can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. Teacher, author, speaker, delighting audiences from New York to Sacramento with a heart and message for the people today. Here's Bonnie Libhart.
What a delight to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us. If you ever knew anyone that is angry and perhaps doesn't know the reason why they're angry, or maybe perhaps they would like to just find the purpose in suffering, then you may want to give them a phone call and say, hey, listen to us. This lady's coming on that's going to be telling about it. And her name is Enger Lanier Taylor. And I told her, Taylor, anybody named Taylor has got to be a good person because that's my maiden name. But anyway, please help me welcome from Huntsville, Alabama, Enger Lanier Taylor.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Well, you are a double bonus for us because, first of all, you work with a friend of mine, a really dear friend of mine's husband, and then also just hearing you as an author writing From Suffering to Glory. I guess this one's Purpose in Suffering, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Part of a life survival skills series.
Correct.
So I want to know why you feel like you know the answer to purpose in suffering, and I'm sure they're going to show that in a moment if they haven't already. So tell me some of the things that you've gone through. Now, I understand that when you were 5 years old, we'll just start then.
Well, when I was about 5 years old, my father committed suicide. And I think it was, I'm sure, as I began to get older, the Lord helped me to realize that it was at that time that I began to build walls in my life, so to speak. And I was closing myself down, and even though the outward appearance looked fine, you know, the smile, I was in school doing well, and in other activities, dance and other things as I got in high school. But the outward appearance did not tell the true story of what
Yeah, because one thing I said to you on the way down here from Huntsville was, you are the most together person that I believe I've met in a while, because you just seem so poised and together.
And what did I tell you?
And you said that's a facade, but that's not right. The way you were feeling
That's
inside.
Right. I was feeling a little nervous about the trip today. And I think I don't know, I know it wasn't anything intentional, but as an only child, and my mother was raising me alone after the death of my father, I just began to do what I knew to do, and that was to carry on and do the best that I could do. But I began to like I said, to build these walls. And something I learned as I got older is when you build walls, you can't get out and nobody else can get in. And so even though I looked like I was fine,
because you were in every kind of activity that the school had to offer.
I did. I was in dance. I was in many beauty pageants, and was very active in band. I was in the Enger Club, the president of, just seemingly someone you might pin an overachiever, or someone who really achieved a lot. But nobody understood, and even at that time I didn't understand the loneliness I felt, or even though I was involved with a lot of people and surrounded by a lot of people doing activities, I still felt lonely.
Lonely in a crowd.
Yeah, lonely in a crowd. And those are things you can't really express at that time. And so it was many years later. It took probably 25 years, probably around my 30th birthday. Years prior to that, I had been really seeking God and asking Him to show me those things in my life that were hindering me from a closer walk with Him. And I had been praying that prayer, off and on for years. And one day while I was at work, in my office, the Lord just really began to speak to me and say that I was angry with my father. And that was a hard thing to swallow at that time, because all of my memories of my father were very good, you know, the short memories that we had together. And I had to come to grips with the fact that that was a fact, because it wasn't as if he was driving in a car and was run over by a drunk driver, or he was sick or any of that. It was something that I felt like he had made a choice and a decision to exit my life. So I had to really begin to deal with those feelings of anger, of pain, of rejection. Of course, I knew it really didn't have anything to do with me, but as a child, I think most little girls would agree that all of their fathers hung the moon. And my father hung the moon, and he named all the stars. So for him to take that kind of action it really wounded me. But at that age, I was not able to verbalize that. That was the first funeral I had ever attended, so there was nothing for me to grab hold of. I didn't know what to do with that. So it took up until that time, and God really began to help me and to deal with me. So it was then that I started to go through the grief process.
Enger, as back when you were 5 years old and you went to your dad's funeral, a lot of people, there's a lot of conversation about, should you even allow children to go, young children, to go to funerals, though it was your dad? Do you think that that was a wise thing?
I do, because I had no concept of death. And my mother said she remembered me asking once we returned home, you know, maybe a few days later or a week later, when was he going to get out of that thing and come home? So had I not seen him there, I probably would have never been able to come to the realization that he was not coming back if I had not seen him.
Did you see them where he was buried? Did they also let you see them?
Yes.
Did you comprehend?
No, I had no, it just really, like I said, I think that children are a lot more mature now than we were, say, 30 years ago, and so I don't recall ever being or having gone to a funeral prior to that time. So I really just didn't get it.
But you still wondered when he was coming home again.
Right, so the two things didn't click. Mm-hmm. You know, this meant that he's not coming home anymore. Mm-hmm. So it took a period. I had to really share with my husband and say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's happening to me, so don't think I'm going off my rocker.
What did you tell him you were feeling and what was happening to you, Enger?
I don't recall our exact conversation, but I'm sure I was expressing to him how much I missed him. I have two young boys who are growing, and now they're starting to play in sports.
They're like,
and you know, my oldest looks a lot like me, so you know, you always wonder what their relationship would be like. But I knew that God had a purpose and a plan in what He had allowed to happen in my life. Mm-hmm. So I began to say, now God, why am I here? You know, what is my purpose and what is my destiny, my final destination?
Do you feel like that God answered?
I think I don't think God gives us a total picture of everything that we are to be doing at one time, because if He gives us the roadmap when we ask Him, you know, all of the turns and the pitfalls and the heartache and heart pain, we may decide that we don't want to accomplish that thing which He has designed for our life. So I think He, at bits and pieces, gives us little bit by little bit what He desires for us to do. And I think I'm at a much greater understanding of being able to share and to open up and let people know that there is a silver lining, there is a reason
every cloud
has a silver lining. I know that my pain it was not just for me, it was to be able to share with others. When Jesus told Peter that that Satan had desired to sift him as wheat, that he had prayed for him.
He'd intercede, prayed to his Father
that his faith would not fail. And when
And it
he
didn't.
had come through, that he was to turn and to help his brethren.
And that's our purpose.
And that is why we are here. We're not here to let's say, to be closed off, that God blesses and delivers us, and we don't share that. We are to open ourselves up. We are to embrace and let other people know that He is a God of mercy. He is a God of grace. He is a God of patience and long-suffering. And if you will just go through this process that He is taking you through, that you will understand it better, you know, as the old.
And it's so difficult to do something and not go through the process, because if we don't, He'll make us go through it again, something similar, if we
That's right.
stop ourselves or turn back at that point. Because I know there's been some lessons that I was supposed to have learned at one time, and I'm having to go through that again because I didn't learn it the first time, lessons that we need to learn, like overcoming anger and forgiving people. Now tell me about the moment, what exactly happened when you realized that it was from your father that brought you to tell your husband what you were going through? You said that
When I
God actually
accepted,
showed.
when I accepted the fact that this is a true statement, this is not some figment of
Because
my
God really
imagination.
showed you that.
He really just allowed me to see, because I had been asking Him, show me everything, because even though I loved God and I was
was
doing
like a
church
barrier,
work,
like you
there
were
was something
still
I
around you.
couldn't quite release myself to trust Him like I should. And the reason was because the earthly father that I had that was here that I could see, that said He loved me and was here to protect me, left me. And so it became harder, I think, even though I knew God was real and loved the Lord, to totally release myself, because then I was putting myself in a vulnerable position to completely trust Him.
This Heavenly Father would leave you also.
I think probably that somewhere was in there. And so he started to show me how anytime we build a building, you've got to go low before you go high.
Yes.
And if there's no foundation, I work in a particular office where we build things and all of that. So if you have to go in and do the groundwork, you've got to get rid of the loose
the
rocks.
process of building a house, and the biggest part of it has been this
Preparing the
ground, getting engineers, digging
right.
the foundation, going deeper.
That's right.
And make sure you're down to the bedrock.
That's right, because you've got to make sure that you hit a part of the foundation, or
That's solid.
that is solid. That
Really
is not going to move when the winds come, that your house is not going to topple over.
right.
And I have found that people tend to want to go high, but they don't want to dig low first. The way up is down.
Down first.
And so when the winds of adversity come, and they are coming in all of our lives, because a lot of us profess to have faith and believe God's going to do this and do that and the other thing, but we have got to know that there is going to come a time in all of our lives that the faith that we say that we have is going to be tested and tried, to show you, not to show God because He already knows, but to show us what we have. Do we have what we say we have in Him? Truly. And to get you to a place to where the winds of adversity, when they blow, that your foundation is not shaken, because you have placed your foundation on a rock, a solid rock, and that rock is Jesus Christ.
And I think that I learned so much from you even this morning, because when I had learned some things about my husband's had open heart surgery and cancer, and I was just really feeling low because he'd had 2 attacks yesterday. And I was crying. But everything in my logical mind knew that I was going to be taken care of, that he was going to be taken care of. But at the same time, I still, what was that? Why was I crying? Why do you think that people, though they know that God's going to take care of them, and why do we fall under that sometimes? Why do you think I did?
I don't know. We're all human. We all get are sometimes overwhelmed by our circumstances. And I don't think anything negative about that. It happens to me still. But the thing is, you know who to cry out to.
That's true.
You know where your help comes. You're not lost as if someone who does not have a God in your life to instruct you and to help you. So you know that when you're upset and you feel burdened beyond excess, you know who to call on, and you have to call on his name. And immediately you feel the peace in knowing that he
That's
is
true.
God, and he says that he will never leave you nor forsake you. In Psalms it says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers us out of them all.
Yes, I like that all.
Every situation.
Now, you had a situation, too, where you thought you had a darkness, an oppressive spirit that came to you one night when you were all alone. How did that happen?
That was, it was probably, and I've never really shared this with anybody, but I was alone, and I had gone to a conference the night before and gotten home fairly late, and went to sleep around 2 a.m., but around 4 I woke up to a terrible storm outside. And when I woke up, there was...
Now, your husband was
my husband was away.
Home, and your boys
and
were
my
home.
boys were away, I think, spending the night with my cousin or grandmother or something. And just a dark, a heavy spirit. It was as if I was paralyzed in my bed, and I couldn't really move, and I couldn't even think straight. And just hearing this wooing that, nobody really loves you. Nobody understands the pain that you're feeling. Just why don't you just end it all? Nobody will really miss you. And I immediately recognized that was from the enemy. But at the same time, I began to understand how sometimes people succumb to that, especially when they do not know Jesus.
That's when people commit suicide.
That is true.
But
or they have
sometimes
such a moment, they feel so far away from him. So I just, the only thing I could even think to say, I was just to call on his name. And I just started to just say, Jesus, call on his name, and he immediately, I went back to sleep. I mean, it was if he just, shut everything down and just put me back to sleep. So I began to ask these questions when I woke up about, what was happening to. Yes, I remember that. That's something I'll never forget, because it was the realest thing that I had ever experienced, is as far as something hovering over you to oppress you, to get, if the enemy can keep you from realizing who you are and what your purpose and destiny is in life early, before you realize it, he can paralyze you, because you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this thing and making you feel like nobody loves you, this or that. And that's a trick. That's a trick of the enemy. But Jesus, he paid the price for all of that for me when he died on the cross. So I rely on and trust in the power of his name and the power of the blood that can get us through every situation that we are in. And his word says that no weapon that is formed against us shall be able to prosper. So it doesn't mean that the weapon is not formed, but it cannot prosper against me. Mm-hmm. And everything he allows is for a reason and for a purpose.
Well, Enger, you were invited to come on the program through your friend Sharon and Bob and friends, and you then started feeling nausea, and as you thought about the program, tell that experience of how you just were feeling, why did I ever agree to this? I guess that's...
No, I was nervous, and because I don't take the opportunity lightly. Everything that our steps are ordered. I believe my steps are ordered
By the Lord.
By the Lord.
I know mine are.
And so I don't take the opportunity, or when you get a chance to minister and to speak your heart and open yourself up to other people, take that lightly. So I was a little nervous, and I had to repeat one of the scriptures that I go over with my children every morning. It says, what time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. So I just thank God for...
Repeat it again.
What time I am afraid, I will trust in him. And so I thank God for the opportunity to be here and to share and to let people know there is a process in which we must go through in order to go to another level in God.
And that's what I think he's doing with all of us across the world. The Christian world is that taking us to a new level. Mm-hmm. Things are... Vera Zedermanis was an apostle and prophet, and she said that the whole world's being shaken.
Yes.
And shaken so that, you know how if you shake popcorn, the little hard seeds will go to the bottom, and you have the fluffy ones on top, the ones that are ready to be eaten or ready to nourish our bodies. Well, I think that's a way that God is doing in all of the world, that he is shaken, and so we can go to the next level, so we can be used by him in what he's drawn us to be. How did you come to know the Lord?
Well, I came to know the Lord at a very young age in a Primitive Baptist church in Huntsville, Alabama, and was always involved in church, in the choir, and Sunday school, and all the activities that you do. But as I got older, really began to know that there's got to be something more than the religiosity of just going through the motions, going to do these things, a personal relationship. Because I can know the president's name, I can know his history, where he lives, how many children he has, what he did before he got to be president, but I don't know him. And the only way I get to know him is is we have a relationship, a one-on-one. That's how I get to know him. I spend time with him. And so I think a lot of us have taken that road as to they know about him, but they don't know him, because his word says that he has not tried us as silver, but he has tried us. He has chosen us in the furnace of affliction. So it's in that furnace where where the impurities are brought to the surface, where those things that are not pleasing to him are brought to the surface, because those things are tried under intense heat. Mm-hmm. And so you get to see some characteristics in yourself that's not like God, those things that have to be purged and removed from your life. And a lot of times people don't want to cooperate. They don't want to deal with some of these things, so they don't stay on the road. They don't continue the process. But we've got to stay in the fire for him to complete. Just like the processing of gold jewelry, they put it in intense heat so that the impurities rise to the top and can be scooped off. And as often as they dip it as many times as it takes to get the impurities out of it. But it strengthens the metal, because his word says that when he's finished with us, we shall come forth as pure gold. So that means we've got to stay in the heat until he decides that we're ready, and he decides that his work in us is completed enough that he can bring us out. And we know that he says that weeping endures for a night, but joy comes in the morning. He didn't say how long our night would be, but he did say that joy comes in the morning. So I had to hold on to those scriptures that and rely on some of the things that David said and you mentioned it this morning. He said that he encouraged himself in the Lord. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes and he shut off people from me where I really couldn't talk to them, or you would try to talk to him. And
when did this happen that he shut people
well, I
out?
mean, I think when I just totally relinquished myself to him, was on the way for God to really purge and heal, you know, and everybody wants their prayer partner, you know, to call and say, well, God, I think it's doing this, and he's saying this, and this happened, and that happened. But I was reminded of the Garden of Gethsemane, that Jesus went to pray, and he took Peter, James, and John with him.
Then he went a little further.
That's right. And he said, now just watch and pray with me for a little while. But the thing is, when God has got you in this place where he wants you one-on-one, nobody can go there. They're not going to be, you can't find them when you call them, because he wants your total, undivided attention. Mm-hmm. And if they say something, he wants to get all the glory. He's going to get all the glory anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, Enger, I am really hoping that we get to talk more about the Purpose in Suffering and Life Survival Skills series that you've written, From Suffering to Glory. But I would like to know, toward the end of this program, that if anybody'd like to have a book, by the way, we can make sure that you get part of that series. But I'd like to know what brought you to writing about this. It sounds like you've been a teenager and never went through drugs or drinking or wrong boys or cigarettes or all that stuff.
Well, I didn't, but that was not my story. But I had another story.
You have another story.
I have another story in that, you know, I knew people that did those things, and they may have, you know, they have their story. Mm-hmm. You know, God processes all different.
Yes.
And we go through different avenues and different things that we have to do to line up with his word and his will for our life. So no, I didn't do all of those things, but I had some other issues to deal with.
We get to hear about those next, I hope.
Oh.
Just give us a hint as to maybe what they would be, what something is.
I had to deal with anger.
Okay.
I had to deal with rejection, or the acknowledgement of rejection, and the fact that I was a people pleaser. I never, you know, would say that, but I did things to try to please people instead of.
And would that be possible because it was just you and your mother so many times that you knew she'd suffered enough and you didn't want to add to that? That could be. Well, we're going to find out more about that at another program, but we are so delighted that you joined us. And Enger Lanier Taylor has written this book, and I think that they do have a series of the books that you're going to get to see those up close if Kimberly did that, Purpose in Suffering. And in that Purpose in Suffering, you may find your purpose in what you're going through. And we're so delighted you joined us here. And if you would like to have Purpose in Suffering, you can get in touch with us through the toll-free number, which is 877-823-6886. And along with Enger Lanier Taylor and myself, we are so delighted that you joined us, and we're glad that you came.
Thank you for
Come back
having
again.
me. I will.
In fact, for most of you, there's an opportunity for you to see another portion of this program in a little while, but if this is the time that you're leaving the program, well, we want you to see if you can't see her at another time, another program, or just order her materials and learn. If you or someone you know is going through some suffering, then find out what that purpose is in suffering. And I think that I'd like to bless you with, the Lord is our sun and shield. He will give grace and glory. No good thing shall be withheld from you and me and Enger Taylor that walk uprightly. And God bless you for watching.